Welcome, everyone. Samantha Allen is here with us, and she is the author of Patricia Wants to Cuddle and Real Queer America, which were our July fiction and nonfiction reads. So thank you so much for coming, Samantha.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been so fun to see all the photos and reviews on Instagram. I don't know what's going on Geneva, but the Instagram side has been very gratifying to see as an author.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like you and I feel like I kind of already know you because we've been DMing so much over the last month or so. So I'm really excited to be able to chat with you. And I think my door is ringing.
Oh, no worries.
Door problems.
Hello, everyone. I am terrible at vamping. Hopefully my hairless cats will make an appearance on this Zoom. I strategically positioned myself so that okay, she's back.
She's back. Did you say your cat was gonna make an appearance on the Zoom?
I was telling them I hope that my cats do. Yeah.
I hope so. Well, I'm going to give a little intro to you for everyone here. Samantha Allen is, as I said earlier, the author of Patricia Wants to Cuddle and the Lambda Literary Award finalist for Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States. She is a GLAAD award-winning journalist and editor with bylines in The New York Times, Rolling Stone, CNN, and more. She has a PhD from Emory University and 2 hairless cats, as you already mentioned. So thank you for being here. I guess we can just dive right in.
Sure.
I'm going to ask a bunch of questions that I've been wondering since I've been reading your books, and as well as some community questions. And then we'll do a rapid fire round. And at the end, we can open the chat for questions. So to everyone who is watching our conversation, if anything comes up and you want to ask Samantha, type it in the chat and we will visit it at the end. So congratulations on your fiction debut. I would love to know how the publishing experience has been compared to your nonfiction work. As more marginalized stories get told, how do you see that feeding into mainstream publishing and its impact on accessibility?
Oh, yeah. Patricia, definitely an interesting publishing journey for sure. So, I mean, I'll be dishy in this environment, I suppose. Like as a trans woman, like memoir is often seen as like the way in, or at least traditionally, like that's the way that the publishing industry has tended to like sort of admit trans women into the club. So even though I had the idea for Patricia before Real Queer America, it didn't feel like the sort of thing I wanted to, I don't know, query first, right? Like Real Queer America was closest to the journalistic work I was doing. It had memoir elements, and it just felt like so much safer of a thing to pitch, at least from my like particular position. Who knows, maybe if I had gone out with Patricia first, everything would have been fine. But like that just speaks to the, I don't know, internalized fears we get in our heads about these things as well. And so, yeah, Patricia was a bit of a pivot from Real Queer America, like, lesbian Sasquatch murdering bachelor contestants was not on anyone's bingo card for what I was going to do next. And yeah, it took a while to sell, but it ended up finding a home at Zando with an editor who had liked it when we pitched it to a different publisher. And yeah, I'm just like so pleased that there's this like weird, wacky independent publisher that like saw it and was like, yes, we love this. And they have been like fantastic with it. I couldn't have asked for a better like fiction publishing experience. And part of what I've been pleased about it is, I don't like with Patricia at least, and I'm like, no one's asking me my autobiography in conjunction with it. And that's fun to get to have a book where it's not like, I don't know, I just have to talk about my relationship with my parents or something at like bookstores across the country, right?
Yeah. You don't have to trauma dump every single time you visit a new city. Like all of these people know so much about you.
Yeah, yeah. And I get how Real Queer America, like, I mean, it's very warm and intimate, and like, it will leave readers with that feeling to the point where, hey, look at that. Hello, Spuds. Where, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's different experiences. I'm still obviously in conjunction with memoir, like happy to talk about my life and my life experiences. But with Patricia, it's fun because it feels like this thing I plucked out of my brain and we can talk about the thing instead of my brain.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how the hell did you come up with this idea? Because like you said, this was on nobody's bingo card, lesbian Sasquatch bachelor. You said you came up with this before Real Queer America. So can you tell us a bit about its origin story?
Yeah, my wife and I watched The Bachelor. She's kind of fallen off. I'm still going strong. And I love horror movies, slasher movies, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of thing. Classic 80s slashers, Sleepaway Camp, etc. And to me, we were just kind of like one night realizing, hey, these are like structured exactly the same. They're elimination style contests. People leave one by one. We're sort of watching them for the same reasons. There's like a catharsis in being like, oh, I really want that person to go home and look home, like, oh, that character is so annoying and now they're dead, like, and so it felt like, hey, these things kind of belong together, especially with the trope of the final girl, which like The Bachelor has, like that it's essentially a guessing game to like see who's going to be the final girl, and the edit gives you clues. But yeah, it just like the similarities were beyond just surface level. It felt to me like the similarities said a lot about why we watch reality TV, about American media culture. And I just wanted to marry the two. At first, I thought that the threat would be like a jilted ex-contestant or a former lead coming back to like sabotage the production. It would be a little more grounded than Bigfoot. But then I don't know, Patricia kind of stumbled into the picture and presented lots of symbolic possibilities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that horror and reality TV kind of mirror each other, and they feel like very meant to be when you make that connection. Like the verbiage is all very, very similar in like a competition and in a horror movie. Like it's very violent.
Yeah, yeah. You're gonna get eliminated,
Yeah.
like
No,
that's
exactly.
like
It's like the Hunger Games. But speaking of The Bachelor, you mentioned that you are still so stuck on watching it. I am as well. I've been watching it every single week since I moved out at 17 with my mom over FaceTime. So it's been like a weekly ritual for me. And I would love to hear about your relationship to the franchise and what your research process was for Patricia in regards to the fans' relationship with the show, as well as the inside producer's studio.
Mhm. So I've obviously spent a fair amount of time lurking on the Bachelor subreddit, as you might be able to tell from the interstitials in the first act of the book. Some people have said that it sounds eerily like how those conversations go, just in a very condensed form. Um, I watch the show because it's like straight drag. Like I call The Bachelor like RuPaul for straight people, because it's like it's heterosexuality like turned up to 11, like
Yeah.
all the Dyson Air wraps and all the heels, and like, like it is like it's an almost parodic performance of gender, and like everyone is performing gender, but The Bachelor is like this concentrated, distilled like gender performance.
Yeah, Judith Butler would have a field day, and I'm sure she has.
I hope she's at I hope Judith Butler is out there watching The Bachelor. Yeah, but it's like it's a fascinating social experiment. But to me, like, yeah, culturally, it's like it's also kind of stayed stuck in the mud as like society has evolved around it. It still captures this kind of like white evangelical Christian like lore making around like love and marriage um, on mainstream television. And that's like fascinating to watch in a morbid way as like other reality shows get more diverse, and The Bachelor sort of like stumbles and tries to get more diverse, but sort of like can't in a way because it's still beholden to like its founding mythos.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I'm watching for that reason, and it's like hitting a weird breaking point where like the game is kind of collapsing and the culture is changing too fast for it. So I like wonder what'll happen.
Yeah, I definitely want your thoughts on the most recent season, but your explanation has me thinking of a connection between your two books, like how Patricia and like The Bachelor is rooted in that white evangelical Christian culture, and Real Queer America goes in and like finds those subversive queer communities within those like states where that culture is most prevalent. Do you find any connection between the two works, or like The Bachelor and Real Queer America? I'm like, I don't know what I'm phrasing, but like something's percolating.
Yeah, I think that like, well, for one, you know, my contestants all hail from like different parts of the country. Lila May is from Dallas, Vanessa, Colorado, Renee from Tampa, Amanda from LA. So like all of these are places, you know, like I've traveled pretty widely across the country personally, but also like as the result of doing Real Queer America and then the Real Queer America book tour. So yeah, like I was able to draw from some of that in terms of like describing the contestants, and also certainly from my like experiences in places like Texas, where you at once have like all of these like progressive leftists changing Texas, but you still have this like entrenched like culture of the churches and Waco and Baylor and you know
Yeah.
beauty pageants and yeah.
Yep. And shiplap, lots of shiplap.
Uh-huh.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Juliana Gaines. I always think of her when I hear Waco, which is, I feel like the Gen Z association with Waco versus like the boomer association with Waco, very different. Um, Anyways, so this current season, Gabby and Rachel, they're basically thrown into the fire and told to figure it the fuck out by themselves. If anyone in who is watching watches this current season, please share your thoughts in the chat. But Samantha, what do you think of Gabby and Rachel and how they're doing so far? I have to know.
Well, I'm one very happy that they actually cast Gabby. I like Rachel too, but like to me, The Bachelor almost never casts like goofy girls.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the archetype, I think Caitlin Bristow was probably the last Bachelorette that they were like, you kind of have like a personality and we're gonna let you be the Bachelorette.
Yeah.
So when Gabby was like funny and they decided to make her the Bachelorette, I was like, this is new. Like, this is interesting. Like, usually you just kind of pick like someone who's just like, I just want to be married and meet the right person. And I think I have a line in there from Casey of like, the word random is like hot girl code for like actually having a hobby or something like that. And that's sort of how I feel about who gets cast as the lead. I am sort of like miffed at the show, like sort of throwing them into it and being like, you have all the power, but in reality they have like none of the power because they're not telling them how it works. Um,
Exactly.
they're trying to kind of like obviate their own role in it.
Yeah,
Which yeah.
it's definitely like amusing to watch, but I feel so badly for them. Like this is so traumatizing. I cannot imagine being in that position.
Well, the things will go wrong and they'll think that it's their fault. And it's like, no, like,
No, exactly. Like
yeah,
you're literally just all dating the same people by not by choice. And they told them that they were going to be the bachelorettes together on live television without any knowledge that could be a possibility before. It's
yeah,
manipulative.
yeah. I don't like, Yeah, they obviously like production obviously knew at some point like we're going to have the men choose between them. But instead of like telling them outright, like we're gonna have 3 weeks, and at the end of those 3 weeks, the men will split into camps.
Yeah.
Jesse Palmer just comes out there and is like, hey guys, like, how are we doing this? Like, what do you think we
Yeah.
should do?
Yeah. And they both had to have mental breakdowns before getting to that point. They
Yeah.
both had to cry on camera multiple times.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the show feels the formula is getting stale. I just wish they tried to like have the drama emerge more organically from the interaction. Still, it feels like things are getting a little more artificial and
Yeah,
stilted
it's very
lately.
contrived. Do you watch any other dating shows? Because I watch almost every single one. I'm like a dating reality TV whore for sure.
Okay, so not well enough to know their names, but I watch a lot of Love Island, mostly as kind of like ambient background noise. Like
Yeah.
while my brain is anxious and depressed, I just want to hear hot British people go like, "Oh, she's a right proper fit bad," like have a
Yeah.
chat. That
Yeah.
was Love Island Australia, that last one. Also, I'm into F Boy Island. I just
Oh,
started the new
good.
season.
Yeah, I finished the new season a few days ago. Fabulous.
It's it's really fantastic, and I think it's like sort of like what it would look like for a show like The Bachelor to like evolve a little bit. I mean, I think that you could find a medium in the casting between F Boy Island and The Bachelor in terms of the level of seriousness that people
Absolutely.
bring to it. But
Yeah.
like what I love about F Boy Island is like it acknowledges that people want fame and money from reality television, and it folds it into the program instead of making it something that like the show has to deny or like render
Yeah.
taboo. Like
People can like be upfront and be like, yeah, I'm not here for love. I'm here for money.
yeah, and like The Bachelor has a real problem with that now because everyone knows that everyone going on it is there for money or Instagram followers
Yeah.
or TikTok followers. And yet, like, if any contestant ever talks about that openly in the game, they're like,
Or you
yeah,
gotta
exiled.
pretend the whole time. You gotta perform.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Real Queer America because
sure.
I absolutely loved it. And I'm like, this is the first time that I'm interviewing an author on both books. So I'm really excited
I'm
to
honored.
continue talking about it. All right, so we have a lot of younger queer folks in our community, and we talk a lot about religious trauma and have read quite a few books on it. So, if you were to come into your queerness in this present moment, what would you want to be? What would you want to have on your religious trauma reading syllabus?
Oh, goodness. Um, whew. I read so in my own like journey coming out of Mormonism, I think the one of the more formative books for me was called From Housewife to Heretic. It was like I forget her name. I should look it up, but she advocated for the Equal Rights Amendment and essentially got like disfellowshipped by the Mormon Church for doing that.
Oh my
And I
God.
believe if she's still alive, like lives on a lesbian commune in New Mexico now or something like that. And
Good dream.
yeah, reading that was like super, super important to me. Yeah, like gosh, there's this Audible book by Brooke Hauser, also a former Mormon. I like, yeah, Mormon religious, everybody's, there are common connecting points between a lot of religious traumas, but yeah, Mormon culture can be very specific.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I think to add to your list, we read a book several months ago called We Have Always Been Here by Samar Habib, and it's a queer Muslim memoir. Highly, highly recommend because it
okay.
has such like a universal religious trauma message and how you can still have a relationship with religion and spirituality through queerness. That one, tears constantly. So highly, highly recommend to everyone on this call as well as you.
Thanks.
Speaking of Mormonism, I feel like the media right now is effectively having a Mormon moment.
Oh God, when I
Um,
saw the Mormon TikTok swinging thing,
oh my
I
God.
wanted to go hide
Yeah,
under
I couldn't even keep
blankets.
up with that. I was like, what is going on? But we have Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, Mormon No More, Under the Banner of Heaven, just to name a few. So as an ex-Mormon yourself, who I know has had her fair share of being asked if you've watched Big Love, how do you view this resurgence and fascination for the Mormon religion, specifically with FLDS?
Yeah, so I feel like every few years we get a Mormon TV show or kind of another little Mormon moment or some Mormon public figure. Um, to me, like Mormonism is a uniquely American church. And so it makes sense to me that it keeps kind of like having mini zeitgeists over and over again. It was founded in the 1840s in upstate New York during like an American religious revival. And I don't know. It's sort of like it's people will often think of it as this kind of very like weird, like marginal religion, and there are respects in which it is relative to like the landscape of American spirituality. And yet there's so many things about it culturally that sort of like I mean, a lot of Mormons go on The Bachelor sometimes, right? So like there's an alignment there of like it's the culture of sexual purity, the like light prosperity gospel elements of it. The like, I don't know, emphasis on cleanness, the Protestant work ethic that's embedded in it. People are kind of fascinated by it, and especially by like the sexual hypocrisy inherent in it, where it's like very much restrictive of people's behavior and yet is rooted in like a polygamist cult. So it's like, yeah, it's fascinating, but I think it's fascinating in ways that like American culture is also hypocritical, like to make the Bachelor connection again, like The Bachelor is weirdly presented as this like this is a traditional journey to find love, and yet the format of it is like polygamy, like
Yeah.
temporary polyamory at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw this post on I follow a lot of polyamorous like sex therapists on Instagram, and someone reposted a tweet saying it is so irresponsible for a show to put monogamous people in a polyamorous situation without any of the emotional capacity and vernacular to navigate it and address it and communicate it about it with one another.
Yeah,
And
they
like,
all have to
that's
like reinvent the
irresponsible, but it's
wheel.
entertaining and
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, I thinking about it as like a polyamorous experience completely changed like how I view the show.
Yeah, and you hear like the leads coming off the show, like they're finding vocabulary for it for the first time that like polyamorous, like people have like often used. They're like, this is wild. Like, how can I be in love with more than one person at the same time? Like, I never thought that was possible. Yeah, so it's like it's interesting to watch these two very different groups of people who have had very similar experiences, and The Bachelor people just have no idea that there's like a vocabulary out there for any of
Or like
it.
what you're feeling is okay and normal and you shouldn't be shamed for it.
Yeah, the show wanted you to
The
like
show wanted
experience.
you to feel the shame and to feel
Yeah.
all of these things. Absolutely. So I want to really get into, I think, what part of the heart of Real Queer America is. And in reading your book in Sapph-Lit, there was a lot of discussion sparked from coastal city queers. And I imagine, in writing it, you faced a bit of your own like backlash in how you presented urban queer life. And I was wondering how you pick and choose and rationalize the good and the bad in the communities you've been with. I personally struggle to put into words like how divisive and defensive people get about bigotry, while also wanting to believe in growth and change in people and have that restorative justice model. So how do you respect your needs and boundaries as a queer person while fighting for that restorative justice, which is a model that believes that anyone can change and grow, and there is no good and bad? Because, you know, as a New England girly turned New Yorker girly, who has religious trauma and has cut off conservative family to respect my own boundaries, this is something that I think about a lot. I personally need to recognize that I did not have the capacity to educate the people that hurt me. That's not my job, but there was a lot of course, there's so much good in those relationships. So having to believe that they can change is still hard. So it's just like that tension between like bigots are bigots and everyone can change in restorative justice, which I want to aspire to myself.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. For one, I will say, like, since writing Real Queer America, there have definitely been a fair number of people from like New York or LA reach out to me. And I think that the sections that I wanted to come across as more tongue in cheek about like New York being garbage island or that kind of thing may not have.
So it's okay. It is.
I know, but I still feel like I was like a little unfair. And there are definitely aspects of Real Queer America that are a little like polemical in that regard of like, well, you know, let's take down the greatest city in the world a couple notches. Quote unquote greatest city. Because like part of it, like, as you know, as a piece of opinion was meant to kind of say like these like vaunted like homes for the LGBTQ community aren't the only places where queer culture and life are happening. And in fact, like on a statistical level, like half of queer culture and life is not happening in these places. So yeah, that was like but that's been a bit of reflection for me since writing it, for sure. And definitely like I totally respect like not having the capacity or bandwidth or just like emotional resources, or like no one should have to put themselves in a situation where they know they're not going to be accepted. You should not have to just willingly expose yourself to bigotry, aversion therapy style to like, I don't know, preserve a relationship with somebody. I like don't endorse that at all. And like everyone has needs that shift throughout parts of their lives. There are people in Real Queer America since writing it who have moved after I finished writing it. You know, I came out here to Seattle to be closer to my parents who had retired here. I don't, because of, you know, every reason I wrote down in the book, I don't like really resonate as much with queer community here as I did back in Florida or Georgia. But you know, I'm like trying to learn like what that connectivity looks like. But yeah, like, you know, some people from Real Queer America are like, I'm here, I'm gonna stick it out. And some people are like, look, I'm a Black trans woman in Texas, like I have to get out of this place. And I like, yeah, everybody has different like like relationships to where they live that can change and shift depending on how hostile it feels and where your circumstances are and where your positionality lies. And yeah, I don't know, I want there to be room for all of it, even if Real Queer America reads in this kind of like slanted kind of way.
I don't
And
think
my
it's-
second cat makes an appearance.
What's this one's name?
This is Nala.
Oh, hi Nala. She's so cute. Nala and Spuds. Excellent
Yeah.
names. No, I don't think it reads in like a slanted way at all. I think where some people were frustrated was like the compassion that you have for the people, like the Mormons that you grew up with, where you're like,
Uh-huh.
they're good at heart. And like that belief that no one is inherently bad, I think is sometimes like a hard
Mm.
idea for queer people, especially to digest.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. Like, definitely terrifying after like 10 years to go back to Provo, just being
Yeah,
like, I'm here, let's see what happens.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I feel like from looking at public opinion polling of the US around queer issues in my work as a journalist for like close to a decade now, and then from my experiences writing Real Queer America, it's like there are the rabidly anti-LGBTQ people who like won't hear you or connect with you. But I think there are like a large percentage of people, especially in these red states, who just like haven't had experiences or gotten to know queer people on a personal level. And obviously, that process of those people getting to know someone like me is like a little messy, right? But like, you know, I think there have definitely been times in my life where I'm like, if I have the emotional bandwidth to do it right now, I am going to be the first trans woman that this Mormon person has met, and that will like pay dividends down the road for like when their kid comes out to them, or when they like, yeah, run into a trans person at Starbucks or whatever.
yeah, that's how I feel going back to my parents' really conservative town in New Jersey and going out and raising the pride flag and waving at the kids on the sidewalk who are biking by. Like, that's, my little act of service to help normalize and bring representation visually to these people who probably would be shielded from it otherwise. So you talk about Provo a lot in the book, and since publishing it, since fully experiencing and digesting that, how has your relationship with Utah and like Provo changed for you?
Hmm. Um, it's been fascinating. So I wrote it in the summer of 2017, first year of the Trump administration. And it has been kind of like saddening to me to watch, like, but not necessarily surprising, I suppose, to watch like um, Utah Mormon culture, especially, kind of embrace Trumpism. Like, this dynamic that I describe in Real Queer America is still there, still plenty of like LGBTQ activism in these places. And I still subscribe to the long-term optimism in the book that like you can't unqueer America, like this will keep changing. And yet I think that we're seeing this real like pain period right now in places like Utah, Texas, Florida, the American Southeast more broadly, where like you're seeing that kind of like cultural Trumpism like really accelerate and come down hard on queer folks. And so like that's been saddening for me to see in Utah. Like, yeah, Mormon culture really embrace like a thrice divorced like reality star who seems like the person who would gel the least with like what Mormons preach. Yeah. Um, that's been like disappointing for me to see, and like it makes me like hesitant in an all new way to like revisit it than I was at the start of Real Queer America.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that going back, I mean, I'm sure like authors always want to go back and change things, but say you were writing this book now, in 2022, would you add anything? Would you visit a different state? Would you want to tackle a different issue? Real Queer America Part 2 2022, what does that look like for you in your hypothetical dream world?
I wanted there to be a Great Plains state
Mhm.
in there. Um, I used my advance on this trip, a big chunk of it. So like I was pretty limited in like where like how many different places I could go. So like with dream budget, like I would do way more states. I would hit more regions of the country instead of being so kind of like Southeast focused after Utah. And I wanted to, I wish that I had done kind of more talking to like Indigenous queer communities in the book. There was a planning stage where I was planning like a portion of going to New Mexico, and it just like didn't come through in time to like make it on the itinerary. And that's definitely like a regret. Yeah. And in terms of issues, the real queer America of 2022 would definitely grapple with the panic over trans youth, um, trans healthcare, especially. And it would probably deal with climate. I mean, imagine, I don't know, like the July of 2022 is way warmer than the July of 2017 felt. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And, climate does, disproportionately impact queer communities, especially Indigenous queer communities and, trans communities. So climate change is absolutely a queer issue. It is a feminist issue.
yeah.
That's a really interesting take for sure. Let's see. Oh, is there a reaction or comment from either Patricia or Real Queer America that is like stood out to you?
Uh, oh gosh. Um, I love how many people use the word bonkers in their Patricia reviews. That's been really fun to see.
Yeah.
And in terms of Real Queer America, like I think some of the most meaningful messages I get are from like parents of trans kids who have read it. Especially like in a moment like now, it's like incredibly gratifying to see messages like that, because like my hope in like writing Real Queer America and other memoirs is like I'm not I'm not necessarily wanting to like share all of my life with people, and yet doing so seems to like maybe if doing so can help like shield a next generation of trans kids from like I don't know their parents knowing absolutely nothing about it in advance, then like sure, like whatever, have my aging millennial experiences.
Have my trauma. Here
Yeah.
you go. Silver platter.
And like that makes me happy to see like a parent of like a 7-year-old who's come out be like, oh, like I read your book, and like that, reading about moms of trans kids in Utah or something like helped me like understand better how to handle this emotionally or that kind of thing.
That's
That
so
like
tender.
yeah, I'll like
Yeah.
never get over that. Like that, yeah, those are the kind of messages you get where you're like, my work here is done.
Like,
I
I can
can,
retire. It's
yeah,
fine. I did what I set out to do.
yeah, I can return to my little kitties and just turn my brain off and watch Love Island. And
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
No thoughts, head empty. But so these two books are very different from each other. There are parallels, as we've discussed, but would love to know, we're on the edge of our seats. What's next for you? I feel like you're very unpredictable given you came up with Patricia after Real Queer America. So I'd love to know if you have anything on the horizon in your brain that you could share with us.
oh gosh, always be debuting. That's my motto. Just that's my Glenn Ross saying. No, because yeah, real queer American nonfiction, Patricia fiction. I think I'll probably keep writing fiction if I can, if the publishing world lets me. I have a work in progress. It's kind of like contemporary romance with social media elements to it. That's about as much as I can say. I think I'll be querying it in the fall if I can get enough of it written by then. So
Oh, I'm
it,
excited.
I don't know if it'll qualify as a debut though. At some point,
At
you
some
have to
point,
get
you have
yeah.
to be like, this is my third book.
Yeah, yeah. No, trying to avoid the sophomore slump by just never doing a second
Never
thing.
doing a second book. No. So next month we are reading, well, I guess it's already August. Time doesn't exist. In August, we are reading Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour and Open by Rachel Krantz. And I was wondering if you had read either of those books.
No, but I want to read them with you all now. I'm
Join us
this
on Geneva.
this weekend I am gonna dive into the Rabbit Hutch. Is that what it's called? By Tess Gunty.
What,
Um
by who?
Tess Gunty, I believe. It's called the Rabbit Hutch. I'm it's weird
Yeah.
fiction.
Some
Yeah.
Sapph-Lit on the call, please Google it and put it in Geneva so we can all look at it later. Um, okay, amazing. You're more than welcome to join us in that reading journey, of course. But now we can move on to the rapid fire round. And to all the Sapph-Litties watching, now would be an amazing time to ask Samantha some questions in the chat so we can have them all ready to go once the rapid fire round is over. So first thing that comes to mind, don't worry too much. What are you currently reading?
Oh gosh. I've been so busy that I have not been picking up a book. The Rabbit Hutch. I
There you
will be
go.
reading it today.
Beautiful. Is there a book that you recommend everyone read?
The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin.
Ooh, I haven't read that one. I'm gonna look that up. Is there a book that is coming out that you're really excited to read that isn't published yet?
I am excited to read every Zando book. I'll be home team Zando. My editor, Serena Kamath at Zando, is editing a bunch of like crime and murder stuff in the next year that like
I love Zando as well. For those of you who don't know, it's a Gillian Flynn imprint, and
oh,
it's
Scorched Grace, I think, right? Is that the
it's
first
the
Gillian Flynn?
lesbian nun one.
Yes,
Yes,
that okay, I'll say that.
yes,
I'm like,
there we
really
go.
excited to read that.
I'm so excited. Have you seen the movie Benedetta?
Oh gosh, it's on Hulu
Yeah,
now, right?
please watch it.
Yeah, I like yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then did you take up an unusual quarantine activity?
Uh Trying to perfect breakfast sandwiches.
What was your go-to breakfast sandwich?
Just like a bacon, egg, and cheese classic, but like I would like try to I would like make it every day for a week to try to make it better.
I love that.
And now now I my kitchen is untouched.
You're like, I'm done with bacon, egg, and cheese, never cooking again. I
Yeah.
mean, that's logic, absolutely.
There
Uh,
was a focaccia phase as well.
oh,
Um,
I love focaccia.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, I would love to have dinner with any dead person, like while they're dead. Like I would love to have a little zombie dinner.
A,
Uh,
a zombie dinner or a ghost dinner?
well, the ghosts wouldn't be able to like enjoy it, although the zombies, I guess, would need to like, I would need to produce some actual human flesh for them to like enjoy the dinner. So let's go with that. I don't care which historical figure it is. I just want there to be a dead person at my dinner and I will feed them somebody.
I love that. Okay, and then do you have a favorite class that you took at university?
Oh, I was a linguistics major and I like pragmatics, which is the study of language use in context. It's going to be the most boring answer in the world. So
I love
yeah.
I love that. Okay, and then I would love to know about some of your favorite media that has queer or trans representation, well, queer and or trans representation, I guess. What is your favorite movie with trans queer characters?
Can I do TV first?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I am a huge Yellow Jackets fan.
Mhm.
seeing the reception to Yellow Jackets while Patricia was waiting in the wings to come out was very reassuring. I was like, okay, like the Gen Z girlies are like kind of like scary.
Unhinged.
Yeah,
Like
kind of
deeply
deranged.
unhinged,
Yeah.
absolutely deranged.
So
Yeah.
maybe
I do
there's
identify with those adjectives.
yeah, it made me feel like there was hope for my like weird little gory reality TV book. Oh, movies
Yes.
with queer and trans representation. Um I what's it called? Tragedy Girls or Thoroughbreds. There was this whole micro boom of like girl best friends like murdering together. Um Thoroughbreds was one of them, and I think Tragedy Girls was another, and I think there's another in that subgenre, but I really like that. I really
I
like
love that
exploring.
genre.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I haven't heard of either of those movies and I haven't seen Yellow Jackets. So I have some education to do for
Ah,
myself.
if you liked Patricia, Yellow Jackets will
Yeah. No, I'm
betray
not
you.
I'm not like a massive non-reality TV show person. So it took me like so many Sapph-Litties yelling at me to even just start watching The Wilds on Amazon, which is like a RIP, it's canceled now. But it was a wonderful like survivalist queer TV show. Um yeah, so I will need some more motivation from the Sapph-Litties who really need me to see Yellow Jackets, and I am getting direct messages about it right now. For yes, yes, I will watch Yellow Jackets. Everyone, thank you. Um, and then, do you have a favorite celebrity or like person to follow on social media that you think is like a good follow for queer, trans, rep, whatever it may be?
Oh goodness. Can I say a straight woman that I'm morbidly obsessed with? I
Absolutely, yes.
as straight as far as I know, Dakota Johnson, I am like,
She's bisexual.
okay, there
Yeah.
we go. This was not erasure. I have just never looked at her Wikipedia. I promise you. Um, so there we go.
No, I
One
love
of
her. I
hashtag
love
one
her.
of us.
One
Yeah,
of us. Yeah,
I
people are
yeah,
obsessed with her on TikTok. Absolutely.
I don't I don't know what's going on with my obsession. I think someone once said like she has a face that knows what an iPhone is or something like that, re her being in something like Persuasion and
Yeah.
I'm sort of like I don't know if she's a good actor or not. I just know that like I can't not look at her. I know that the Architectural Digest video of her house is very good and she has the best taste of any obscenely rich celebrity I've seen.
And she
And
loves limes.
yes, and of that like Hollywood set posts more about queer issues than a lot of
Yeah.
high profile actresses.
She's also so hot.
Yes, that is true.
Okay, so I have some questions in the chat. I think before I so for everyone who is trying to chat, I think I had it on that you could only message me, but now you should be able to message everyone. But I have a few that we can rattle off and keep them coming, people, if you have any. We have about 9 minutes left. Okay, so in Bachelorette history, do you have a favorite Bachelorette?
I love Peter Weber's season. To
We were just
me,
on his podcast. How was that?
that was a surreal experience
Pilot Pete,
to
Windmill
talk to
Pete.
to talk to Pilot Pete. Um, yeah, like to me, that was kind of when the show was at its peak in terms of like you get a huge Instagram gain from coming off the show. So like people were very committed, very like goal focused on that show. A lot of like iconic contestants came off of that season. Um, and it had drama that sort of hit the right balance between like organic outgrowth of these people's personalities and and some producer stuff obviously.
I mean, Pilot Pete for me produced one of the most iconic Bachelorette moments where Hannah Brown was talking to one of her other final three guys that he was upset that she had sex. And she said, yes, I did 4 times. And Jesus still loves me. I like mic drop, iconic, beautiful. The evangelical girlies were quaking. It was show stopping for me personally as like an 18.
Yeah, an all-time great reality TV line. Lila May would shudder.
Okay, and then Jenny wants to know, what was your playlist while writing Patricia Wants to Cuddle? Do you listen to music while writing?
I don't, but I do watch things. I have 30 Rock in the background, like pretty much all the time when I'm working, because like the kind of like joke a minute format, it like means that anytime I like tune out from writing, I can just be like, that's a funny little like line, and then just go back. I was like binge watching just like old horror movies on Shudder while writing Patricia. Yeah, so I had like Argento movies on in the background a lot. Yeah.
Wasn't Dakota Johnson in the new Suspiria?
Oh, that's right.
Ah,
Yes. And
so good.
maybe she can act because I liked that.
Yeah, I
I
like
liked.
that too. Yeah. Okay, and then Ezra wants to know, was it satisfying to kill the characters one by one in Patricia? Who were you most happy to see realizing they're going to die? That is a fucked question. I love you, Ezra.
I love this question too. It was hard to kill them because I grew to like everyone by the time that I murdered them, which was kind of my goal in writing them. Like we start off with some of their more archetypal characteristics, and then the more you kind of get to know them and spend time in their perspective, you're like, maybe like, I don't know, Lila May can be explained by like the relationship with her parents and wanting to assert herself in her own identity. And yeah, so I really liked writing Casey's death though.
That was so good.
Casey is my own like worst elements, like all of my bad features and like unevolved like character traits, like produce like turned into like a person who hasn't let go of any of them. And so for her to be in this situation where like all she's had her entire career is like control and the ability to exert control, to put her in, I think, one of the more like helpless deaths of being like a bag on her head, her hands tied and drowning. That was like fun to do. It didn't make it. I really also liked writing Dex's death.
Yeah.
So in the very early draft, I had like POV chapters from Dex and Jeremy, and it was just like too many perspectives. We had to kind of declutter it. But I originally had Dex kind of like bleeding out on the road, thinking like, oh, I can like, I think I repurposed it for Casey, thinking like, oh, I can still save this. Like we can get him on Fallon and he'll like tell this like car crash story as like a TV ready anecdote or whatever. I originally had some of that from Dex's perspective, and that was fun. I found it fun to be in his head, even if, yeah, it didn't survive the final cut.
When I was reading Casey's chapters, I was thinking so much about the TV show Unreal. Did you watch that? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely an influence there. And I believe like Unreal had like a former producer or something attached to it on a creative level. So Pilot Pete said that Unreal was like realistic, like
That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. Okay, Lily wants to know, do you have a favorite fictional monster slash creature?
Hmm. Does Jason count as a monster? I feel like Jason is monsterified enough. I love Jason. Jason just wants to be dry. Jason is a soggy boy who needs a towel and a dehumidifier, and maybe then he would stop killing.
That is the simple solution to satiate a psychopath. Absolutely.
Yes.
Just give him a towel. And then we have Dara saying, not a question, but as another ex-Mormon, I really appreciated your take on the community. So thank you.
Of course, there's so many of us, so many queer ex-Mormons in the world.
Roz wants to know, I would love to know your favorite book of the year so far.
I've really enjoyed The Odyssey by Laura Williams.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another Zando book.
Uh-huh. All I'll ever read now after Zando bought Patricia, I'm like, I swear everlasting allegiance to you. I will only read Zando books. I'm company one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and they're also very fantastic books. I also have the Odyssey and it's chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's off
Um,
kilter.
and Nika wants to know, who are your favorite characters in Patricia to write?
Hmm. I I love them all so much. I think I struggled the most with Vanessa, and I'm willing to do some self-critique and say I think those are probably the weaker sections. Lila May, definitely fun to write. Um, kind of tapping into like my old religiosity. I only kind of took Mormonism seriously from like age 17 to 20, but that was a very formative like period of my life to do it. And so Lila May was like, oh, I'm gonna like put myself back in that headspace again. And that was a terrible and rewarding thing to do creatively. Um, Renee was really like rewarding to write because it was like Renee kind of gave voice to a lot of my like, I don't know, most grim thoughts about the world.
Yeah.
Uh Casey though was just like so fun to write because yeah,
You got to
just
be
like
devious and manipulative and crazy. It was great.
yeah.
And then we have a last question from Madison, and she says, if it's too heavy for the convo, no worries. But as an ex-Mormon, I'd love to know your perspective on the Associated Press's big article on Mormonism from this week. I have not read or seen this article.
Mm.
Have you?
Yeah, it's like essentially about like the Mormon church having a hotline for leaders to report when they like catch wind of like an abusive situation in a home, and like what that hotline does, or in the case of the article, does not allegedly do when it receives that information. I mean, I again like devastating, but also not surprising. I like when I was growing up, it was like, oh, if you have a sexual sin to confess as a teenager, like you need to go into the room with the bishop alone and talk about it with this, like, I don't know, like 50-year-old like dude who works in, yeah, Hoboken as a advertiser or something. Like Mormonism has a lay clergy. Like these aren't people who are like devoting their lives to the ministry. Like they have a day job and then they also work as like your priest or your pastor, right? So it's like these are people in your community and you're like going to them and talking about intimate details of your life. And I think recently, like since falling under scrutiny for that, like the church has tried to be like, well, parents can come with you too when you need to confess or whatever, but still just like I don't know, like you are creating an environment for situations like this when you, yeah, are like having children talk about that with like their bishops. Yeah.
I am going to go read that article. That was all the questions that we had from our community. And that wraps our interview. So, Samantha, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you want to say to the Sapph-Litties on the call before we go?
Thank you so much for showing Patricia so much love. That has made my whole life, honestly. I knew that there were, yeah, I knew that all the all the weird little Instagram and TikTok Gen Z girlies would love Patricia, and to see that manifest is yeah, it there's no way to describe what that means to me. I was so scared for this book to come out, and now I just like feel happy about it.
That makes me so happy.